Hey, welcome to the Neijiaquan podcast. This is Isaac. This is episode 8. In this one, we talk about Bruce's time in India. I talk a little bit about training at Anvil Ranch in the old days. And we continue our discussion on the standing and dissolving practice. We've also launched a Patreon, so if you're interested in that, you can check out a link on the website or in the description of the episode. Okay, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy.
Picking up where we left off with opening the energy gates of your body. And right now we've come to the part of the foreword where we move on from Taiwan to experiences in India. Meditation as chi cultivation. So it looks like Kumar tells the story of his next chapter of his development where he went to India to learn meditation and chi practices there. At the start here it says, from the Taoism he had learned from Wang Shujin in Taiwan, Kumar knew that energy cultivation can be one of the basic methods of meditation. So meaning Qigong itself is a basic method of meditation. It's kind of what you use to build yourself up, build up your energy, your awareness, your sensitivity, so that then you have more success meditating.
It's like the training wheels for meditation, right? So it's not the spiritual work that you do, which I think is more what he was getting into when he went to India and later on. But it's the, energetic background, if you will, so that you have the capacity to do long periods of sitting, to deal with the stuff that comes up inside your body when you're sitting, and doing meditation. So it's like, it's the precursor, just like, it's the precursor to fighting or anything else. It provides you the physical and energetic sort of, stability to do whatever you want. So that, we talked before about the pyramid, of martial arts, qigong, and meditation, and I think, they all provide their own, specialty in terms of what they give to your system or, your training, but, he was clearly on a more, spiritual path, I think, than is necessary to learn energy gates. Right? Energy gates is a secular activity that uses a little bit of, Taoist principles, but you don't have to, light candles and worship your ancestors to do qigong.
So opening the energy gates serves as a foundational practice that you can then use to take into a number of different directions. So we've been saying that all along. There's a sense that using the basic tools of opening the energy gates, you build your physical alignments, you get in touch with your energy body, you start dissolving away some of the things that are stuck, and you make your body swing. These are the things that lay the foundation for being able to do martial arts, but they also give you flexibility and pliability for sitting practice, or, arm strength for Tui Na and medical purposes, So it's such a great crossover. It's a multi-purpose tool.
Right. I mean, Bruce talks about, having a student who was went on a mountain climbing trip and had never mountain climbed. It's qigong is about getting your body to respond to your mind. So it doesn't matter what the activity is. If you tell your body to do something and it does it, that's going to make the activity, easier, right?
Right. So it helps you learn. In my experiences, it's helped me learn other physical fitness exercises. I protect myself by keeping my knees straight. I move from my dantian a little bit. I'm able to regulate my breath. So, if I try something new, I'm at least capable for a little while in it. And I've found that to be really helpful. So, and the other sets in the system aren't necessarily as foundational. In other words, say something like bend the bow, where you're really working on the spine. I'd say that's a more specialized set. Whereas opening the energy gates is, even from the title of the set, you're opening the doorway to the chi practices that are available, and this opening, then from there, there's different rooms you can enter.
Yeah, I mean, it's the jumping off point in a sense for, whether it's meditation or martial arts or whatever activity it is you're.
So you kind of can't go wrong in a way. You're laying a foundation with standing and basic movement that.
I mean, it could even be the jumping off point for doing different kinds of qigong. I mean.
Sure.
It's just that the those fundamental pieces about being able to feel your body and to do these basic sort of scanning things and dissolving things are really just that's you can apply that to literally any activity except maybe driving, or something where you shouldn't have your eyes closed. But So
we looking at this chapter, we read about his experiences in India and how Indian energy methods are similar to Chinese. But there was one area I wanted to focus on, especially. There's a few sentences here. At the end, he talks about how Indian tradition values a guru and how important that is. As divine agents, gurus are treated with a deference and reverence that very few Westerners would accord to a living person. Though the Chinese tradition also accords a greater respect to teachers than one finds in the West, Taoist masters are considered to be more or less custodians of ancient wisdom. The relationship between student and teacher in the Taoist way is more like a respected friend helping a friend than a godlike master helping out a mere mortal. So the Indian tradition has a different approach to it than the Chinese tradition does in terms of training and energy work. But I like this thing about Taoists being on the same path and sort of friends together. And we've made a lot of friends over the years.
I think that's a fundamental difference in the culture, right? I mean, Hinduism in general has a lot of stuff about devotion, as a method of practice, right? And you can be devoted to all sorts of things. Where Taoism is more about experience, and so the idea of a teacher in Taoism is more someone who's done it before. That they've walked the road before you doesn't necessarily mean they're better than you.
Right.
It just means they've a few steps ahead of you.
And what's funny is some of the older people and mentors we've had over the years, I can see myself in the future, kind of. That
sure.
Even say an elder. When I was in my 20s, I met an elderly teacher in his 80s, but I could tell we were both martial arts guys who loved this stuff and loved looking at old books and discussing the and just training together.
I mean, there's a kindred spirit,
I
think, in a sense, to all martial artists have it, where you may not like the person, but you kind of respect them on that level.
For sure.
You feel some sort of bond to them. I mean,
right.
I think that's one thing that Bruce, I think it's in the introduction to the martial art book, that he dedicates it to all martial artists. Because it really is, when it comes right down to it, people that do these sorts of practices, are a very small percentage of the population. I mean, I think he used to say something about, it's 10% of the population does martial arts, 1% of that 10% do internal martial arts, and then, 10% of that are actually doing it well, and so it's such a small percentage of people that really do this stuff that, I think to look at it as something other than a community is kind of silly. It's
we're all in this together, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural tendency for humans to want to divide themselves, but I think something inherent as feeling your body is kind of a universal thing that all humans can kind of get behind.
I agree. There's something I just like that sense of us all being on the same team that is in a lot of Taoist writings will emphasize that less hierarchical approach to life than maybe say a Confucian writing would, for instance. But it's an interesting point worth taking, and
I happen to agree with you.
I mean, and that brings me to the idea of training back in the old days when there was a pretty big community here in Northern California where you guys used to meet up on the retreats. And I never got to go to the Anvil Ranch retreat, but I always heard from a lot of people over the years what a good time you guys used to have and what a nice setting that was. But I was going to ask you to describe, say, crossing the Golden Gate and heading across into Northern Cal. What's the experience like going up to Anvil Ranch back in the day?
It was a long time ago, for one thing. It was probably 20 years since the last time I was there. But I think the main thing there was a mixture of excitement and nervousness about going to spend a week doing qigong or whatever it was, because it's just a long time to give up on your regular daily life and go immerse yourself. I mean, when you think about guys like Bruce or some of these other old timers who our friend Bob who went to Asia and spent several years training with these different people and lived there, learned the language. I mean, that's a whole nother level of commitment that driving a couple hours north doesn't seem like that big a deal at that point, but it's still that sense of putting yourself in a foreign environment where you're not totally comfortable and just saying, okay, for the next period of time all I'm going to do is focus on learning this skill. It's like going to college or something. Like you stay. The reason people live on campus, right? It's like you have less distractions, and ultimately, the piece, I think the difference in learning this stuff, 100 years ago or something, is the number of distractions you would have had to take you away from your practice. Like we have all sorts of things that, we have cell phones, we have, email, blah, blah, fill in the blank. So, there's a lot of other things going on in our brains besides, work and, feeding your family, right? So,
totally.
So I think that adds a certain piece of, so where meditation is really useful in that can take care of some of that, chatter, if you will, that would then allow you to focus more on doing your martial arts or your qigong. So I think it's a circle. You can go at it from any, you can do the martial arts and the meditation to the qigong. You can do the qigong to the meditation to the martial arts. However you do it, eventually you're going to hit these 3 different points on this triangle. And it's sort of just, a personal journey in terms of how you develop.
Right. At different times, you might have different interests and different things are available. So you end up doing stuff.
I knew lots of people who would come in at the same time. I can think of 2 friends in particular, and when they joined, they were sort of on the same level in terms of what they wanted to learn. But one went much more towards martial arts, and the other went towards meditation. And it's just because, like, they changed as people and they just developed in different ways. And I think that's part of what, a quote-unquote living art is about, is that it's not just written in stone in terms of what you're going to do or how you're going to do it. It develops. And I think, when you do these sort of longer trainings where you're immersed in it, those type of things begin to become clearer to you than if you're just doing it for an hour a week or something.
Totally.
Like that.
So yeah, getting out in that environment is always a nice way to just focus.
It just takes away to be brass about it. It takes away a lot of the bullshit of just what daily life is, and you're able to just focus on the training. Which is kind of nice. And I think that's why historically people that did qigong go to mountains and, go into the countryside or join monasteries and things like that, because it gives you an opportunity to be removed from, daily life and stress and stuff.
Yeah, I like that rural setting for doing martial arts and qigong. Yeah. It just strikes me well. And I like the hot weather in the summer up there, and like the oak leaves and the madrone leaves. It was a real mountainous territory. Pretty steep out there.
It's a lovely place. And there's also, aspects of, doing these practices in nature allows you to feel what the thing is. If you're by water and you're trying to practice something that's supposed to feel like water, it makes it a little bit easier.
We'll splash in a little bit.
Yeah, just whatever. It's just you absorb it sort of by osmosis, so the ocean, for example, is a great place to practice because you're right next to the biggest life form on the planet, and you can, you may not be able to pick up much depending on your level of sensitivity, but you'll get there. Something. It's
There's
there.
A lot of life there, a lot of chi there.
And Taoists, historically, have always tried to, do things in the elements as much as possible. So I think that's just part of the training. But that just as many of them did this stuff, I think, in urban settings. Bruce's last teacher did most of his training in Beijing, and even in those days, I think Beijing was anything but urban, quiet. Yeah, it was quite urban. So, all right, moving on back to the book. Where are we at?
So on to the next section of opening the energy gates here. Lesson 3 is the chi dissolving process, and I think dissolving is one of probably the standout techniques of this whole process and the whole set.
I would say it's the signature, technique of that set.
It could be the signature technique of the system.
But yeah, I would agree. It's the secret, formula for this particular, system, and that, without it, it isn't, much. It's just a bunch of movements.
Yeah. It stands out because most schools don't emphasize it as much. I think everybody's got a sense of letting go or a sense of softness in most internal martial arts and Qigong schools, but I think this method, it's really, out front, blatant, how would you say?
Right. Well, I think
specific.
In one sense, what sets it apart is its level of detail in how you do this particular thing. So almost all schools will talk about, dropping, feeling relaxed, letting go in some sort of vague manner, but they don't really give you, in a sense, a roadmap in terms of how to do that. And the dissolving process is sort of, it's the tool by which you get to things like relaxation. So, it's the, if you think in terms of, you think you want to relax is the beginning of the thing, and then relaxing is the end of it. But there's something in the middle, and the something in the middle, the how-to, if you will, is the dissolving. So rather than leaving it up to you to spend 5-10 years figuring out how to make the jump from thinking about relaxing to actually relaxing, he gives you this specific roadmap. So this piece about going from feeling something to relaxing it to letting it go, that last piece about going beyond just a sense of physical relaxation, I think is what really sets it apart.
So the first instruction here is dissolve blocked energy, ice to water, water to gas. As before, beginning at the crown of your head, notice where you have any feelings of strength, tension, something not being quite right, any general uneasiness, or any sense of contraction. These feelings may be physical, energetic, emotional, or mental.
Right, so it's the same sequence as the scanning process, just with a different technique applied to it. The same way you can later apply other techniques to that same sequence,
So the first level of this is that there's something tense, there's something that's not quite right somewhere in your body. That is what we call ice.
Yes, that is a blockage.
So a blockage. Now, is this, just thinking about it, to me a blockage is where I'm holding myself physically and then I notice I'm sort of got my shoulder lifted ever so slightly. So then I sort of let go of those muscles, and those muscles were unconsciously holding themselves in a pattern that didn't need to happen.
I mean, there are different kinds of blockages. There are yin blockages. What you described is more of a yang blockage. I think the main thing is that it doesn't matter what the blockage is, the process is still the same, right? So Bruce always would say, if you're dirty and you're covered in poop and you want to clean yourself off, do you care what kind of poop you're covered in? Right? And it's you can spend the time and analyze all the things that are wrong with you. And, that's a way to spend your time. But this is much more about, doesn't matter what the feeling is, what the blockage is from, it's just let it go, And I think that goes to that piece about the things you can't identify, the feelings you don't know, that you don't have words for, that you don't have experience with. Those are the things that, how do you deal with something that you can't explain or you can't describe? Well, you dissolve it. You use this other way of, if you will, thinking or being to let go of that piece. So it's like one way of getting through a blockage is to think your way through it. One way of getting through a blockage is to push your way through it, right? To energetically or physically make, that shoulder is stuck, just fucking push on it as hard as you can till it, breaks loose.
And then it's unstuck.
Well, it's unstuck. It might also, cause your some other part of your body to dislocate, but, that thing is unstuck now. But the whole method of this, the water method, is that you're trying to do all of that by that being releasing, by letting go, by dissolving and opening up. And so, it's this sort of yin thing of you're not trying to push yourself to relax or make yourself stretch. You're allowing yourself to stretch and essentially just waiting for your body to give you the okay to do a particular thing. And so rather than stretching or putting yourself in a position and then trying to relax, it's you relax until you can get into that position, right? And so this whole emphasis on dissolving is to kind of give you the tool to do that, right? To go from tension to relaxation to, emptiness or whatever you want to call it.
So that brings us to dissolving, the transformation of ice to water to gas. So he says here, once you have identified a place where your energy is blocked or frozen, your awareness begins to feel the contours of this frozen energy space.
Right, so stage one is feel it.
Then he says, your awareness then begins to penetrate the solid mass, causing the frozen energy to begin to soften.
That's relaxing.
So he calls this the transformation of ice to water.
Right, and that's what most people experience as going from your muscles are clenched to your body feels comfortable, right? But the third one...
Once the entire frozen space in your body becomes soft, you keep your attention on that place and your awareness continues to cause that water space to expand until there is a sense of the trapped energy expanding out beyond your body. Perhaps as much as a foot or two outside its surface.
Right, and that's the release. And so it's this process of feeling something, relaxing it, and just letting it go. And, it's that last part, I think, is where it gets... one is what sets it apart from a lot of other practices, but it's also the part that's the most difficult because you have to go through this process of kind of giving up on any sense of, feeling, strong or feeling relaxed. It just goes into this, emptiness, this sort of gas, this amorphous feeling of, I like to call it gush, but, you just feel comfortable in it.
So the final piece of that is the human energy field takes negative energy that is leaving the body and recycles it back into the body as neutral energy that the body can then adapt for its needs. So that's that feeling of as something dissolves, it leaves you, and then out there in the world outside, it recycles and comes back to you as fresh energy from the outside world.
If you believe in these sorts of things,
right.
That's happening all the time. Anyway, all you're doing here is enhancing in the process,
enabling it, perhaps.
Well, giving it a little boost,
right? Because if there's places in your body that are stuck, they're not properly circulating this energy theoretically. By opening that up, you then get a net gain of energy, even though it's not like you're.
And the more unified your system is, in a sense, the fewer gaps there are for these things to hide, right? These places for things to get stuck where you can't identify it.
So I believe that's what we'd consider the dissolving process. It's as simple as these three words, but at the same time, those words are actually feelings that are taking place inside you on a physical level.
Right, which can take days, months, weeks, years. Who knows how long? Any particular part of your body could take. It could happen almost instantly. It could happen very slowly. There's nowhere to tell, and so. Again, it's just that's the water part of it, right? The water doesn't care how long it takes to drip through the rock. It's just going to keep dripping and dripping and dripping and dripping until it gets through the rock. And even when it gets through it, it's still going to keep dripping and dripping and dripping and dripping. And it's just you're the same the day you were before as you were the day after. It's just now you know what things are without as much fluff on top.
Right, things are clearer now.
Yeah.
But they're still the same as they were.
And it's the same with your body. It's like, for a long time, before anything changes, all you're really doing is going, wow, I can feel this better than I used to, and I can feel that better than I used to. And then slowly but surely. So it's not like you go ice to water, water to gas with every piece. It's like, more like over years, your whole system goes from ice to water to gas. So, ultimately your whole system is living in that place of being relaxed and released. But, that you're talking, 50, 60 years of practice probably. So it's sort of it can be a microcosm thing of, one little part, your elbow, you can relax it and release it and it'll feel better. But also how that works into the whole system is, this sort of unification process that goes on. So there's the big and the little and the little and the big, and they kind of feed each other back and forth, and sort of just this process of feeling things on a very small level, and then not even noticing maybe the big changes, but they're happening. So you don't notice it inside because you're in it. It's like the frog in the water that's slowly boiling. Where other people on the outside will notice these changes in you much more dramatically because they're not in it day to day. So that's sort of the cumulative effect of it, where it's like Bruce would say the snowball effect, that you don't necessarily notice that as it goes down it's getting more and more, but it is. It's so the more you stand, the better you get at standing, and it's just like you won't feel that you're getting better at it, but you'll find yourself standing for longer periods of time without as much effort.
So the last little piece in this section really stood out to me. The process of ice to water to gas is more than just a relaxation technique. Relaxation does not necessarily result in more energy that can heal the body. Also, it is possible to relax the muscles and leave emotional blockages untouched. Energetic release affects you on all levels of being.
Right. I think that's that piece about you can feel physically relaxed and still be mentally tense, or quote unquote energetically tense. That was one of the questions somebody asked him when he was on the Donahue show.
Oh, yeah.
It was about how people can be physically healthy, flexible, relaxed on the outside, and still be internally bound up on the inside, and that that's the sort of, if you will, the silent killer, right? It's the stress on the inside of your body, and so that's one of the things I think these practices are, looking to achieve, is that you develop an awareness of, the inside of your body, and so the dissolving process is sort of the method by which you do, or a method by which you do that.
And theoretically, by working with your inner self and feeling your inner self and relaxing on the inside, you can catch up to some of the hypertension and constriction and tightness that might be contributing to your overall organ health or your inner body in a lot of different ways.
I don't think it's by any means a cure-all, sure. but I think if nothing else will give you a little bit of an early warning to when things aren't going right.
And trust your sensations more.
Yeah, as opposed to waiting till they actually go wrong. And so that level of awareness is really a preventative tool, when it comes to your body too.
Absolutely. And I mean, the final sentence here, energetic release affects you on all levels of being. That's pretty profound. I'm not the most spiritual person, but it does seem like when you're doing standing dissolving and you've gone over the same spot a number of times, and after a while it's starting to feel way softer and way less tense. You can also feel that in your mind sometimes, where you're constricted by thoughts. Those clouds are soaring by, and then you take a break, and you suddenly find yourself feeling like in the moment way more.
You can also just take it on a sort of really basic level in terms of if somebody's punching you in the face, you're going to be in a bad mood. If they stop punching you in the face, your mood's going to improve. And so it's like, part of this thing of when you take away some of that pain, even if it's just a little bit of that physical pain that you live with, because you got a bad knee or bad hip or, bad back, that's going to improve your whole life. Maybe not much, maybe just a tiny little bit, but it will do that, and so I think that's kind of, just a more pragmatic way of looking at it. Sure, it may also make you, a tiny bit more spiritual or less likely to yell at your kids, but that's a nice benefit too.
Every little bit counts.
Yep, sure does. All right.
Talk to you soon.
Cheers. Hi folks, it's Isaac again. Just want to remind you to like and subscribe and check out our Patreon, and you can get some exclusive content. All right, take care.